The story starts with Yuki Maeda, a high school student who becomes increasingly uneasy when he overhears a boy asking a girl to join him at a club. Yuki feels a growing sense of concern, though it doesn't bother him that the girl is a model. What matters is the daily trouble she causes him. The girl's name is Go-To Alice. The boy mentions he'll return later, prompting Yuki to call him a fool and warn him never to come back. A bit annoyed, Yuki settles back in his seat, but is startled when Alice touches his back, causing him to feel flustered. She suggests they play the "What Did I Write?" game. Stunned, Yuki can only watch as she instructs him to face forward. Without delay, Alice starts writing on his back, making him shiver. Her message is short. She writes that she likes him. After finishing, she blushes and asks him to guess what she wrote. Embarrassed, Yuki admits he doesn't know. Undeterred, Alice gets up, moves around, and sits right in front of him, telling him it's his turn. She moves her hair aside, exposing her neck, and warns him she'll know if he lies. Yuki is taken aback, his heart racing as he notices how delicate her neck is, thinner than he'd imagined, and the subtle scent of her shampoo. Alice calls him again, urging him to hurry, sensing his hesitation. Gathering his courage, he slowly reaches for her back, his heart pounding faster. When his hand touches her, she lets out a soft sound, which surprises him, leaving him wondering if it was her voice. Suddenly, Alice stands up and returns to her seat, her face red. She tells him he was too slow and that his time is up. Yuki, still recovering from the moment, stares at his hand, realizing he had just touched a girl. His mind races, trying to figure out what she wrote on his back, while also coming to terms with how difficult it is to handle her. While deep in thought, Alice stands up, moves to his table, sits in his seat, and calls him an idiot. Just then, the door opens, and the boy enters, having forgotten his bag. He notices Alice sitting in Yuki's seat and reminds her. She stands up, explaining it's not what it seems, leaving him confused. Yuki, quietly reading his book, is suddenly interrupted by Alice asking about what he's reading. The other girls nearby take notice, and Alice pokes him, startling him. He quickly stands up, claiming the teacher called for him and that he needs to leave. Internally, he sighs, knowing that if he told them what he was reading, they would likely make fun of him. As he walks away, he overhears the girls gossiping about him. One girl calls him an introverted dork and wonders what he could be thinking, while another wonders why Alice even bothers talking to him. Frustrated, Yuki knows it will be awkward to go back into the classroom now. Alice, however, is taken aback by the comments and responds firmly, telling the girls that they don't know Yuki and have no right to judge him. She adds that they shouldn't concern themselves with who she chooses to talk to. Her words unexpectedly sway Yuki, and he finally admits to her that he's reading an isekai manga, even telling her the title. Alice remarks that the title is too long and that she doesn't fully understand it, but she impatiently tells him to hurry up and show her the book. When he hands it to her, her face brightens with happiness. Yuki is reminded once again of how difficult it is to deal with her. He feels nervous about lending her the comic adaptation of his isekai reincarnation light novel, unsure why someone as popular and captivating as Alice would be interested in such a lesser-known work of fiction. As he contemplates this, Alice suddenly speaks from behind him. Startled, Yuki braces for an insult, but instead, she surprises him by praising the manga. To his amazement, she expresses how much she loves the part where the main character protects the girl. He asks if she really likes it, but before she can answer, he starts excitedly retelling the entire story, only pausing to catch his breath. She nods along with everything he says. Overwhelmed with joy, Yuki exclaims how happy he is that she loves manga too and gladly tells her that she's welcome for the manga, knowing she appreciates it. In school and during painting class, Yuki's classmates are tasked with drawing portraits of each other in pairs. However, Yuki feels troubled, thinking he'll have to do the project alone. Meanwhile, a boy asks Alice to pair up with him, but she walks past him without responding. Instead, she sets up a chair in front of Yuki and sits down, leaving him stunned. She asks if he's working alone, and he nervously replies that he hasn't decided on a partner yet. Before he can finish, she interrupts him, asking if he will pair up with her. He's confused as to why she wants him as a partner, and she questions why he isn't looking at her, pointing out that they'll never finish the project if he keeps avoiding her gaze. Lost in thought, Yuki is suddenly snapped out of it when Alice calls his name and suggests they play a game. A staring contest for 10 seconds. Though confused, Yuki doesn't get a chance to respond as she immediately starts the game, locking eyes with him. As soon as they make eye contact, Yuki blushes, and Alice leans in closer, causing him to look away in embarrassment before the countdown finishes. She declares him the loser, teasing him about his flushed face, and hides behind the canvas. Yuki wipes the sweat from his forehead, realizing that the situation is not going well for him. Alice feels embarrassed as well and removes the canvas, suggesting they play a 30-second version of the game next. Before continuing, she says they need to decide on his punishment. Yuki is puzzled and can't tell if she's being strict or kind. Alice sits silently, thinking about what kind of punishment to give him, while Yuki, lost in thought, imagines all the awkward and embarrassing possibilities she might choose. After a moment, she finally makes a decision, and Yuki flinches at her words. She asks him to let her take a picture of him. Alice pulls out her phone, opens the camera app, and tilts the screen toward him, revealing a silly animal filter. Feeling trapped, Yuki reluctantly agrees, as though he's searching for a way out. To his shock, Alice intends to use the filter for his picture. Despite his protests, he has no choice but to smile for the camera. Alice asks him to pose more like a cat, and though stunned, Yuki awkwardly complies. He raises his hand from the table, mimicking a paw with a grin, and she takes the photo. Feeling awkward and drained, Yuki hears her say, "5 points." Shocked, he looks at her, confused as to why such a trivial thing could matter. Alice, unbothered, comments on how cute he looks. Just then, their teacher intervenes, standing between them and redirecting their attention to the class. When the bell rings, Yuki quickly stands up, eager to leave, but Alice grabs the back of his coat, halting him. Turning toward her, she shyly asks if she can send him the picture, asking for his line ID. Embarrassed, Yuki says he doesn't need the picture, but Alice immediately stands up, leaning closer to him and asking if he even has line on his phone. When he admits he does, she insists they exchange contact information. Despite his objections, claiming there's no reason for them to stay in touch, she moves even closer, pressing him against the door and leaving him with no way out. In the end, Yuki reluctantly gives her his line ID. After receiving it, Alice sends him the picture and asks him to save her contact number. As Yuki walks away, he reflects on how his friends list has grown, though he knows he lacks the courage to ever message her. As Alice walks down the hallway, looking at her phone with a sense of satisfaction, a boy approaches, curious about what she's doing and trying to peek at her screen. She curtly tells him to leave her alone and continues walking. The boy remains confused, while Alice feels pleased with herself for adding Yuki to her list of important contacts. At home, Yuki is lying on his bed, enjoying his afternoon when he begins to feel sleepy. Just as he's about to close his eyes, his phone rings with a notification from Alice, asking if he's awake. Confused, Yuki wonders what she could possibly want from him now. His hands tremble as he replies that he's awake, and Alice asks what he's doing. Yuki responds that he was watching a show, and the chat falls silent. Then, Alice asks where his profile picture is from, and Yuki panics, realizing he should have changed it since it's a character from a game. Nervously, he admits it's a game character and worries that she might judge him. Several minutes pass without a response, and Yuki becomes increasingly anxious. For the next half hour, he lies in bed, convinced that she must think he's weird. Suddenly, the phone rings again, and to his shock, it's a call from Alice. Yuki jumps out of bed, still trembling, and answers the call. As soon as he picks up, Alice says his name, causing him to blush. Talking to a girl, especially Alice, leaves him flustered. She laughs, teasing him about his rapid breathing, which only makes him feel more embarrassed. He apologizes, and she explains that her family had called her earlier, so she had to stop replying to his messages. Yuki feels relieved that she wasn't ignoring him. Alice brings up his profile picture again, and he wonders if she found it disgusting but didn't want to say anything. To his surprise, Alice reveals that she knows the character because her little brother plays that game and finds the character cute. She even asks him to tell her more about it next time. During their conversation, Alice's phone rings, and she asks Yuki to wait a moment. To his shock, the call turns into a video call, and to his horror, her cleavage appears on the screen. Panicking, Yuki shouts her name, telling her he can see her, and Alice quickly realizes what happened and becomes embarrassed. Yuki, equally embarrassed, immediately ends the call, awkwardly saying goodnight. He lies in bed afterward, thinking about the incident and realizing that thanks to Alice, he won't be getting any sleep that night. The next day at school, Alice is looking at the game character on her phone when she notices Yuki entering the classroom. She begins to call out to him but stops when she sees him talking to a girl wearing glasses. The girl tells Alice that Yuki is very kind. Alice is left stunned, her mind focused on their conversation, while other boys approach her, trying to strike up a chat. She ignores them, her attention solely on Yuki. She pokes him, and when he turns, she asks if something is wrong. She quickly replies that it's nothing, leaving him confused. After school, as Yuki is packing his bag, Alice approaches and asks if he's busy. He tells her he has something to take care of and leaves. She watches him go, feeling her heart sink as she sits alone in the classroom. Glancing at her phone again, she wonders if she should ask him to play the game together. Tears quietly well up in her eyes as she calls his name and turns her head, only to find him standing in the doorway. Stunned, he softly says her name, eyes wide. Embarrassed, she quickly turns away. She asks why he hasn't gone home yet, and he explains that the student committee had informed him there was no one else available to clean, so the task was left to him. Alice realizes with embarrassment that the girl he had been talking to earlier must have been a member of the student committee. As she sits back down, flustered, Yuki asks why she's still at school. Hesitant, she finally admits that she wanted him to teach her how to play the game she had been looking at earlier. Yuki is taken aback by her unexpected request, momentarily stunned by her vulnerability. After a long day, Yuki finally leaves school, feeling drained from the activities that took longer than he had expected. As he heads toward the school gate, he's surprised to find Alice waiting for him. She explains that she still wants to learn more about the game and asks if now is a good time. He replies that it is, and she smiles, relieved, suggesting they walk home together. During their walk, their conversation about the game quickly dies out, leaving an awkward silence. It's Yuki's first time walking home with a girl, and he's unsure of what to say. Alice breaks the silence by asking if he watches movies. He admits that he watches them sometimes. She mentions a movie adaptation of the game he's been playing, and he agrees with her, saying she's right. She asks if he's seen it, and he says he plans to but hasn't had the chance yet. She then tells him that she wants to watch the movie but only with someone who understands the game. Since there aren't many people who do, she wonders aloud what she should do. Yuki gets the hint, but the situation becomes awkward again. After a brief pause, she asks if he has time on Sunday. Surprised, he replies that he has no plans. She tells him that she's also free on Sunday. Stunned, he nervously suggests she rest over the weekend before walking off in another direction, leaving her behind. She says goodbye, but there's a hint of sadness in her voice. As Yuki walks away, she watches him, then turns around. He continues walking, but she suddenly stops him by grabbing his arm. Both of them blush at the contact. Alice firmly tells him that they should watch the movie together this Sunday. His face turns red, and he hesitantly asks if she really wants someone like him to go. She looks him in the eyes and replies that she does. She wants to watch it with him. After a moment of hesitation, he agrees, and her face lights up with happiness. She excitedly tells him she'll text him the details later and that she'll see him on Sunday. As she walks away, Yuki feels like he's in a dream, never having imagined that a day would come when he would go out with a girl. Yuki was feeling the pressure. With an outing planned with Alice on Sunday, he had nothing suitable to wear. Desperate to find something, he realized that even for a simple shopping trip, he didn't have anything decent. Frustration built up as he ran out of options. Anxiously, he checked her message again, which said they should meet at the station square at 2 p.m. Noticing he was early, he scanned the area and soon spotted a familiar figure in the crowd. Wondering if it was really her, she caught sight of him too and called out his name, confirming it was her. She commented on his early arrival, and he responded that he didn't want to risk getting lost. As they spoke, he noticed something about her seemed different today. Her presence felt distinct, and he found himself staring at her. When she noticed, he quickly turned his head away. She asked if he wanted to head to the movie theater, and nervously he agreed. He told himself that he couldn't mess this up. At the theater, there was a long line, and Alice told him they'd have to wait. She then asked if he could wait a moment while she stepped away. He nodded, but suddenly, a chill ran through him as a cold drink touched his face. He turned to see Alice standing there, thanking him for spending time with her. He briefly wondered why it hadn't been his role to get the drink for her, but they took their seats. As the movie started, she mentioned that it was her first time watching a movie based on a video game. Yuki gave a brief response, but inside he was feeling a surge of nervousness, especially since she was sitting so close. He wondered if he smelled bad or if he was presentable enough. During the film, a sudden jump scare made Alice cling to him in fright. His face turned red, and when she realized what had happened, they locked eyes. She quickly let go and apologized, embarrassed. His heart raced as he was surprised by how scared she had been. On their way back, Alice said the movie was fun, and Yuki agreed, though he couldn't recall much about it. His nerves had taken over, and he was sure Alice had found the movie boring. When he glanced at her, he saw her smiling, but as soon as she noticed, she quickly hid her face. She softly admitted she had been caught off guard, and quickly clarified it wasn't what it seemed. Then, she asked if he'd like to hang out with her again. Blushing, he agreed, and she smiled brightly. As he turned away, she teased him, saying, "You've finally turned around." Confused, Yuki asked what she meant, but she waved it off, saying it was nothing. She then suggested getting ramen, and he agreed without hesitation, unaware that his ordinary life was about to change forever. Then, as if out of nowhere, Alice asked him which swimsuit he would like best. Yuki was fast asleep in his room when his phone lit up with a message from Alice. Groggily, he picked it up, wondering what she could have sent him. To his surprise, her message asked for his opinion on which swimsuit would look better on her, accompanied by a few photos. Bewildered, he couldn't understand why she was asking him of all people, especially since he had no sense of fashion. His mind wandered to the idea of her in a swimsuit, and he blushed furiously. Realizing he was overthinking it, he quickly typed a reply, saying that both options looked good and that it didn't really matter. As his message sent, a hint of quiet disappointment crossed Alice's face as she read it. Yuki's heart raced, anxious about her reaction. The silence between them stretched on until another message arrived. Alice explained that the store had so many options, but after a long and adventurous ordeal, she managed to pick one. Then, she teased him, asking if he could guess which swimsuit she had chosen. His mind began to drift again, this time imagining she might have picked something incredibly revealing, like a micro bikini. Meanwhile, Alice, anxiously watching her phone, started to wonder if she had pushed things too far. Another message popped up, startling him. Alice asked if he had guessed yet. Nervously, Yuki replied that he had no idea. Alice responded with a playful hint, suggesting he might find out if he went to the beach with her, and then pointedly asked what he was going to do. Yuki's face turned bright red at the thought. He was stunned by her boldness. While a part of him secretly wanted to see her in a swimsuit, the idea of handling both Alice and the beach felt overwhelming. He hadn't been to the beach since elementary school, and the whole concept felt strange. However, as he reflected on his upcoming vacation time, he realized he was free and began to wonder if maybe it wouldn't be so bad to go after all. After thinking it over, Yuki finally replied to Alice, suggesting that they go to a pool instead of the beach. The thought of sand at the beach seemed like too much of a hassle to him. When Alice read his message, she was thrilled. She quickly responded, her excitement evident in her words, saying that the pool was a great idea and that she'd look up some good ones before reaching out to him again. Yuki could hardly believe it. He was actually going to the pool with Alice. His heart raced, and a wave of self-consciousness washed over him. He stood in front of the mirror, took off his shirt, and looked at his frail body. He wondered if he could improve it in time, so he convinced himself that if he did 100 sit-ups every day, it might make a difference. Feeling determined, he got started. But after only 20 sit-ups, he collapsed in exhaustion, his abs aching. He muttered to himself, promising to finish the rest tomorrow. Meanwhile, Alice was busy searching for the best pools on her phone. After drying her hair, she took a moment to check herself out in the mirror. Considering her own body, she decided to do a plank for some extra toning. At that moment, her brother walked into the room, teasing her about what she was trying to accomplish. She snapped at him, telling him to shut up, her focus entirely on getting in shape for the pool day ahead. Finally, the day arrived. Yuki walked toward the pool, nervously glancing around. He noticed a muscular man nearby and immediately felt a wave of anxiety. His self-consciousness got the best of him, but before he could settle his nerves, someone tapped him on the shoulder. Startled, he turned around and saw Alice standing there, looking as stunning as ever. As she arrived, other men nearby couldn't help but stare at her, whispering among themselves and commenting on how cute she was. Yuki, feeling even more embarrassed, glanced down and avoided eye contact. Alice apologized for making him wait, but his nerves were still frayed. Just then, he overheard a man nearby comment, asking if Yuki was her boyfriend and remarking how strange it seemed. His heart raced with anxiety. Trying to distract himself, Yuki turned away, but in his nervousness, his gaze inadvertently drifted toward Alice's chest. She caught him, and with a mischievous smirk, she zipped up her swimsuit and teased him. "You're staring too much. Do you like that sort of thing?" Yuki froze, too flustered to answer, his words completely failing him as he struggled to find a way to respond. With a playful laugh, she unzips her suit again and suggests they hurry up and enter the pool. When they arrive at the poolside, she asks if they should get in, and as she confidently takes off her zipper, he finds himself staring at her thighs. He finds himself staring at her, feeling overwhelmed. He impulsively jumps into the pool, swinging away in an attempt to calm himself down. She calls out to him, telling him to wait, and as she hurries after him, her chest jiggles slightly. Flustered, he tells her to slow down, but just as she reaches him, she slips, grabbing onto him for support. For a brief moment, they both freeze, staring into each other's eyes, and he feels like he's on the verge of losing control. Embarrassed, they quickly turn away from each other, moving apart. She apologizes, and he reassures her that it's all right, but then adds, almost nervously, that being in the pool with her feels dangerous. As she stands there feeling embarrassed, her eyes suddenly catch sight of the pool's slide. With a mischievous grin, she points at it and asks Yuki if he wants to try that slide together. Then, with a playful tone, she adds that he should consider it as his punishment for swinging away without her. His face flushes bright red with embarrassment. The attendant informs them that they need to join the line if they want to use the water slide and mentions a separate slide for couples, where pictures are taken as they ride. Yuki feels relieved they're not in that line, as it's hard for him to face the harsh reality of his insecurities. Suddenly, Alice tells him she wants a photo. Dumbfounded, he stammers, trying to make excuses, but she playfully reminds him that this is his punishment. Yuki glances at the other couples and feels a surge of panic. He knows this situation is bad for him, but there's no backing out now. He's stuck, bound by the punishment she gave him. Looking at Alice, he's surprised to see how calm she is, while his nerves are eating him alive. Nearby, a woman asks her partner if he loves her, and he confidently replies that he loves her very much. Hearing this makes Yuki even more anxious, and he knows he needs to find a way to escape this awkward situation. He starts rambling, telling her that it's been a long time since he went to the pool or rode a water slide. The last time was back in elementary school, and only because his parents had dragged him there. As he nervously talks, another woman notices him, her attention piqued. As they sat down with their shaved ice, Alice playfully stuck her tongue out, teasing Yuki with the challenge of guessing her flavor. Flustered, Yuki nervously guessed, strawberry? She stared at him intently, causing his cheeks to flush with embarrassment. The silence between them seemed to stretch, and Yuki couldn't help but feel self-conscious under her gaze. Nearby, a couple was chatting, and the woman turned to her boyfriend, commenting on how cute the couple in front of them looked. Yuki's heart skipped a beat, and he wondered if they were referring to him and Alice. He hesitated, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they did look like a couple. But then the woman dropped a bombshell. She asked if they were siblings. Her boyfriend responded, saying that the girl was very beautiful, so they definitely didn't look like siblings. Yuki's face grew even warmer as he forced an awkward smile, trying to calm his nerves. It was then that he felt something unexpected. Alice reached over and grabbed his hand. His heart raced at the sudden contact, and when he looked at her, he saw that her face was flushed, just like his. They both held each other's hands tightly, a gentle connection between them that made Yuki's breath catch. As the other couple looked on, Yuki's mind raced. He thought about what couples do and, in a moment of panic, impulsively hugged her. Alice was momentarily confused, but as their bodies pressed together, he felt the warmth of her soft form against him. She smelled faintly of something sweet, and he realized just how close they were. Both of them froze, struggling with the awkwardness of the moment, and after what felt like an eternity, they quickly pulled away from each other. It was finally their turn for the activity. The instructor gave them instructions, telling Yuki that he needed to support Alice from behind. Yuki glanced at her, his nerves escalating as they stood so close. She looked back at him, her face just as red as his. She softly asked him to be gentle with her, calling him by his first name, Yuki. Her using his name caught him off guard, making his heart race even faster. The instructor, sensing their hesitation, urged them to get moving, and Yuki quickly sat behind Alice. Both of them were blushing, the closeness making it almost impossible to think clearly. Yuki placed his hands on her waist, his fingers trembling slightly. His grip tightened instinctively as he felt the delicate curve of her waist beneath his hands. But as he did, Alice seemed to wince slightly. She murmured that it was a bit painful, and Yuki immediately loosened his grip, apologizing profusely. To his relief, she reassured him that there was no need to apologize. But before he could relax, the instructor gave them a gentle push, and they started to descend the slide. The sudden motion caused Alice to fall back against him, and he instinctively looked at her. She glanced up at him, and her voice was soft as she asked him to hold her tightly. Without thinking, Yuki wrapped his arms around her more securely, his heart pounding in his chest. As he did, Alice smiled warmly up at him, and he whispered that he would never let her go. Hearing his words, her smile grew even brighter as they slid down together, the world blurring around them. For the first time that day, Yuki felt like everything might just be okay. As the ride came to an end, Yuki and Alice were greeted by the attendant, who thanked them for riding and mentioned that they could take a picture near the exit. Yuki, still caught up in the closeness of the moment, hadn't moved yet. Alice gently reminded him that it was okay to let go now, and he quickly released her, his face flushed with embarrassment. "I did it again," he muttered under his breath. Alice, feeling the tension in the air, touched her stomach and, almost as if trying to make light of the situation, commented that he was quite strong. Yuki, still flustered, didn't quite catch her words. When he asked her to repeat what she said, she quickly brushed it off with a nothing. As they made their way to the photo area, Alice's excitement was palpable. She eagerly talked about how thrilled she was to see their pictures. But Yuki, on the other hand, couldn't shake the feeling of dread. He was already dreading how he would look in the photo. When they found the picture, Alice immediately looked at it with curiosity, but Yuki's eyes landed on himself first. His expression in the photo was anything but flattering. He looked awkward, his eyes wide open, and his grip on Alice, who was sitting next to him, was far too tight, almost like a creep. He felt his mood drop as he muttered under his breath, "I don't look good at all." Sensing his discomfort, Alice suggested, "Why don't we take another one?" But Yuki, still embarrassed, shook his head and mumbled that it was fine, that he wouldn't even know what to do with another picture. However, Alice's gentle voice stopped him in his tracks. "I want to take a picture with you," she said softly. Moved by her words, Yuki felt a wave of warmth and, despite his hesitations, agreed. Alice's face lit up with happiness as she pulled out her phone and moved in closer to take the selfie. Yuki's heart raced at the proximity. As she leaned in, her face was too close for comfort, and he could feel his cheeks turning redder by the second. Alice noticed and pointed out, "You need to get closer, your face is out of the frame." Embarrassed and nervous, Yuki inched a little closer, his face burning with shame. Alice, not satisfied, urged him to move even closer. The more she asked, the more Yuki's anxiety built, his body trembling slightly. He was genuinely frightened now, feeling overwhelmed by the closeness. He instinctively closed his eyes, trying to hide his discomfort. But Alice, ever the observant one, gently spoke to him, "Open your eyes, Yuki." She then leaned in and whispered in his ear, sending a shiver through him. "I can't take a proper picture of you if your eyes are closed." Her soft voice and gentle touch caused Yuki's nerves to spike even more. His face felt like it was on fire as she gently but firmly took his face in her hands. She smiled warmly at him and reassured him, "It's okay. Just act normal, and I'll take the picture." Yuki nodded, trying to steady his breathing, his heart still racing from the closeness and her reassuring smile. Alice's presence, her touch, it was all so much for him to process. Despite the overwhelming nerves, he took a deep breath and opened his eyes, trying to give her the picture she wanted. For the first time, he felt like everything around him had quieted down, as though, in that moment, there was nothing else but the two of them. However, as they pose for the photo, his hand accidentally touches her chest, and he is instantly shocked. She notices his reaction and points out with a hint of amusement that his eyes have gone white again, asking if they should take another picture, but he nervously refuses. Later, as they sit together on the bus ride back, she asks if he enjoyed the pool. He replies that he did, though he admits it's giving him goosebumps. He assumes that, under normal circumstances, he'd probably be at home right now, relaxing, playing games, and reading manga. Suddenly, he catches her reflection in the window and silently wonders why she invited him in the first place. He wonders why she invited him to the pool, his thoughts drifting to the possibility that Alice might be interested in him. His face flushes red at the idea. She notices him staring and asks what's wrong. Hesitantly, he replies that it's nothing, rushing off his thoughts. Yet the possibility lingers in his mind. Could she really be interested in him? Even so, if it's actually true, he can only imagine what that might entail. He sighs and dismisses it, convincing himself it's just his imagination, and reminds himself that he's likely overthinking it, believing he's not someone who could be worthy of such attention. Meanwhile, she calls him over to show something on her phone, only to discover that he's already fallen asleep. Noticing this, she gently taps him to get his attention. When she sees him smiling with an adorable expression, she can't help but snap a few quick pictures. Realizing he hasn't woken up, she breathes a sigh of relief and hides her face, embarrassed. Curiosity takes over as she looks at the photos she just took. After checking to make sure no one is watching, she hesitates for a moment before cautiously leaning her head on his shoulder, thinking it's fine for just a little while. A soft blush creeps onto her cheeks as she settles next to him. Suddenly, he stirs in his sleep and, without realizing it, rests his head on hers. Now, she's stuck, unable to move, her heart racing as she remains there, blushing even more. She notices how close his face is to hers, their lips nearly touching. Her heart beats faster as she blushes deeply and closes her eyes, leaning in slightly as if to kiss him. Just then, the bus jolts, waking him up, and she quickly pretends to be asleep. Blinking sleepily, he realizes he must have dozed off without noticing. His gaze shifts to her, resting peacefully on his shoulder, and a wave of nervousness washes over him. For a moment, he considers waking her up but stops, mesmerized by how beautiful she looks while sleeping. He quietly admires her long eyelashes and delicate features, blushing as he does. Unbeknownst to him, she is also blushing, still pretending to sleep, unsure of what to do as they sit in close proximity, both lost in their own emotions. She glances at her phone and sees a post suggesting that changing hairstyles occasionally can impress the person one likes. The idea makes her blush as she wonders if she should try a twin-tail hairstyle. Tentatively, she asks if he doesn't like twin tails, surprising him with the sudden question. Later, at the pool, she mentions that she got a bit of a tan and warns him that they need to be cautious in the sun. Playfully, she asks if he got tan too and insists that he show her. He quickly reassures her that he's fine and that she doesn't need to worry. While there by the pool, he finds himself unintentionally staring at another girl's chest. She notices this and feels jealous, pinching him sharply. Surprised, he asks her what's wrong, but she brushes it off, claiming it's nothing. A bit later, she hands him some homemade chocolate, saying she made too much and it might not taste great. Out of nowhere, she asks what he would do if she told him she loved him. Blushing deeply, he's caught off guard, as this is the first time someone other than his mother has given him chocolate. Flustered, he asks if she said something because he didn't quite hear her. She's momentarily stunned but quickly dismisses it, saying it's nothing and that he should just try the chocolate. He agrees and takes a bite. The chocolate is a little bitter but also sweet, creating a unique and delicious flavor that stays on his tongue. Yuki dislikes extreme temperatures, and on this cold day, his discomfort hasn't changed. She finds him and greets him with a smile, mentioning how much colder it's gotten. He asks why she's wearing such light clothing in winter, expressing his concern, saying that just looking at her makes him feel like he might catch a cold. Without responding, she asks him to show her his hand, then gently takes it and slips it into her pocket. He's stunned, his face turning red as warmth spreads through him. Inside her pocket is a warm pad, and he can feel its soothing heat. She asks how it feels, teasing him with a playful smile as she reveals it's her secret weapon for staying warm. Both of them blush, and after a brief moment, they awkwardly stop holding hands. She quickly apologizes, adding that just that isn't enough to warm him up. Flustered, he tries to explain but realizes that the simple gesture has already warmed him completely. That night, Yuki feels a pain he hasn't experienced in a long time. He glances at his phone and sees their picture from the day at the pool. She had suggested they go again sometime, and it all feels like a dream to him. Meanwhile, at her house, she's in the bath, reflecting on that day. She wonders if Yuki had been awake during that moment, her heart racing as she blushes at the thought. Embarrassed, she hides her face in the water. Just then, her brother calls out, asking if she's done with her bath. She quickly responds that she isn't finished yet. Bored, her brother decides to head to her room to see if she has any comic books he can borrow. When he enters her room, his eyes fall on the picture of her and Yuki. He picks it up, wondering about its meaning and why she has it. On his way to school, Yuki admits to himself that he stayed up late the night before, playing games. He reflects on the game, remembering how flustered he became when a character said something unexpected. As he walks, he spots Alice and thinks it wouldn't hurt to greet her. Summoning his courage, he approaches her and says hello. To his relief, she smiles and greets him back. He sighs inwardly, glad that it went well, but an awkward silence falls between them. He wonders if he should mention what happened the day before. Before he can say anything, Alice takes the initiative and tells him she has something to say. Curious, he asks what it is, but she hesitates, saying she'll explain later before quickly walking away. Yuki stands there, confused and unsure of what just happened. During class, his mind keeps drifting back to their earlier conversation. He wonders what Alice wanted to tell him, anxiously speculating if it was something rude or hurtful. The thought makes him uneasy, especially since he had casually greeted her that morning. Lost in his thoughts, his pen slips from his hand, and he grows more nervous, realizing he might have overthought it. As class continues, his thoughts remain fixated on their conversation. Suddenly, Alice pokes him gently in the back, startling him. She finally tells him what she wanted to say earlier that morning. She mentions there's a game at her house that she thinks he'd like. Stunned, Yuki is left speechless as she asks if he'd like to come over to play the game, adding that it's only if he wants to. She blushes after extending the invitation, while he remains confused and unsure how to respond, his mind racing in uncertainty. Yuki is supposed to visit a girl's house for the first time, but when he arrives at their meeting spot, he faces a problem. He spots Alice with another guy and, without thinking, steps back, hiding behind some nearby leaves. As he crouches, he questions why he's even hiding. He wonders if the guy with Alice is just a friend. Suddenly, Alice snaps at the guy, telling him to stop and leave her alone. The man, unfazed, asks what the big deal is. Yuki, now even more stunned, begins to suspect that this might be an attempt at flirting. His mind races as he wonders what to do. The guy looks strong, and Yuki feels a wave of nervousness. He knows he should step in to help Alice, but he has no idea how. He notices that Alice seems really uncomfortable, and after a deep breath, he decides to approach them. The guy immediately notices him and, glaring sharply, demands to know who he is. Yuki feels a rush of fear but refuses to back down, sensing that the guy is about to grab Alice's arm, saying they're in the middle of something. Alice tries to pull away, trying to stop him, but the tension between them grows. Yuki's heart races, unsure of how to react or what to do next, when Alice steps in and tells her brother that enough is enough and he needs to stop. The guy looks annoyed and lets go of her. She then questions him if he already knows about Yuki and whether he's doing this on purpose. She snaps at him, saying that his actions are the worst. Yuki, completely confused, has no idea what's going on. Sensing the tension, Alice quickly apologizes to him and explains that the guy is actually her younger brother. Her brother glares at Yuki, and Yuki immediately feels intimidated. Without hesitation, her brother announces that he's decided to spend the day with them. At home, Yuki feels cold from the chilly weather, so he hides under his blanket to stay warm while playing games. Suddenly, his phone rings, startling him. He checks and sees it's a video call from Alice. Nervously, he picks it up, only to be surprised to see her in a Santa outfit. Confused, he asks her about the outfit. She smiles and explains that it's for a magazine photo shoot. As they talk, a girl nearby notices Alice on the call and teases her, asking if he's her boyfriend. Alice brushes it off and turns back to Yuki, wishing him a Merry Christmas. Before he can respond, the director calls for her, and she quickly apologizes, leaving the frame to attend to her work. In her hurry, she forgets to end the call. Yuki, still watching, is taken aback when he sees Alice start changing clothes. Embarrassed and shocked, he quickly hangs up. His face burns with embarrassment, silently thanking her for the unexpected surprise while trying to regain his composure, still reeling from the situation. He never imagined he'd find himself in a girl's room, especially in such an awkward moment with her. Just an hour ago, he had been invited to her house, and her younger brother had unexpectedly joined them. Alice sighs and asks her brother why he's tagging along. He replies casually, claiming that his sister is always flirting with him anyway, leaving her speechless. He then clarifies to Yuki that he just wants to spend time with his sister, insisting there's nothing wrong with that. Afterward, he glares at Yuki, causing Yuki to smile awkwardly, wondering how things will go. Alice whispers that everything will be fine. Hesitantly, Yuki opens his bag and explains that, since she mentioned playing games, he brought his own console. Her face lights up with excitement as she eagerly thanks him and asks him to show her. Just then, her brother notices something and grabs Yuki's hand, causing the console to slip and fall. Yuki is shocked by the sudden action. Her brother asks Yuki to come with him for a second, but then, easing his tone, politely requests that he follow him. Alice tries to intervene, but he insists there's something important he needs to discuss with Yuki. Despite her attempts to stop him, her brother drags Yuki away and Alice warns him not to do anything strange to their guest. At that moment, Yuki realizes he's in trouble and silently prays for the situation to improve. The brother leads him into another room, pushing him inside and glaring at him with an intense expression. He asks if Yuki is, by chance, Master Agepan. Stunned, Yuki stammers in confusion, but before he can respond, the boy shows him something on his screen, a character Yuki recognizes. It all clicks into place. Yuki remembers playing with a random person online one day, and over time they became friends, talking often. Yuki then asks if the guy is Kuga. The guy grabs Yuki's hand in excitement and exclaims that he knew it. He recognized him from his ID. Yuki is completely shocked. He then apologizes, saying he didn't realize his sister's boyfriend was his online friend. Blushing, the brother quickly clarifies that it's all right and insists he isn't her boyfriend. Yuki is stunned to hear that they aren't dating yet. As he tries to explain that it's not what it seems, the brother grabs him, flashing a knowing smile, and reassures him to leave everything to him. Just then, Alice enters the room and demands to know what they are talking about. Her brother immediately lets go of Yuki, and she reminds him that she had already warned him not to do anything strange. The brother, with a mischievous grin, responds that he suddenly remembered something he needed to take care of and won't be back for a while. Winking at Yuki, he exits the room, leaving Yuki speechless. The door shuts behind him, leaving the two of them alone. At her workplace, a coworker mentions that Halloween is coming up and asks Alice if she plans to do a cosplay date with her boyfriend. Alice responds that she's not very good at cosplaying. Feeling a bit surprised, her coworker reveals that last year, when she dressed up in cosplay, her boyfriend was thrilled. Alice responds flatly, unsure how to continue the conversation. She had bought a cosplay outfit, initially feeling confident because it was quite popular, but now she finds herself second-guessing her decision. Meanwhile, Yuki is alone with her in her house, his heart racing, especially after her brother, who had been with them earlier, suddenly left with something to attend to and wouldn't be back for a while. He blushes, recalling his awkward conversation with her brother, which has made him even more aware of the situation. Breaking the silence, Alice apologizes for overhearing their conversation. Yuki is taken aback, surprised by her words. She then awkwardly adds that even if her brother said something like that, she laughs softly, remarking that it must have been annoying. When she looks at him, Yuki, still blushing, replies that he isn't actually annoyed. He admits, somewhat sheepishly, that he was actually kind of happy. Alice is surprised by his response and smiles warmly. After a brief pause, she asks if he'd like to go to her room. Stunned by the suggestion, Yuki hesitates, but Alice explains that they won't be able to talk comfortably where they are. Though still unsure, Yuki agrees. They both stand up and head toward her room. When they reach it, Alice tells him this is her room, and as she grabs the door handle, she casually mentions that her parents will be home late today. Yuki is momentarily stunned by the revelation, and they exchange a shy glance, both blushing. Without further words, they enter her room. Yuki looks around, now seeing what a girl's room looks like. Alice watches him, her gaze lingering on the bed, and blushes. Standing in front of the bed, she calls his name softly, and he immediately apologizes. Alice sits on the bed and tells him to sit wherever he feels comfortable. Though still uncertain, Yuki looks around until she gently reminds him there's space next to her. He blushes, hesitates for a moment, and then moves toward her. However, in his nervousness, he trips and falls onto her. For a brief moment, they lock eyes, the closeness overwhelming. Unable to hold back, Alice quietly tells him that it hurts a little. Yuki, startled, quickly apologizes and moves his hand. She reassures him it's fine, though both of them blush deeply, the atmosphere between them thick with tension. Her brother returns home and begins searching for them, eventually stopping outside her room. As he listens, he hears Alice's voice telling Yuki to stay out, and a smirk forms on his face. Playfully, he teases Yuki, calling him a player, and jokingly refers to him as his brother-in-law. Curious, Alice asks what he means by that. Her brother looks confused by her question, but then decides to check on them. He opens the door only to find them simply playing games together. He sighs, looks at Yuki, and asks if things are progressing between them. Alice, confused, asks what he's talking about. He turns to Yuki and assures him that he'll make sure to set things up properly next time, even suggesting Yuki stay over. Yuki, completely caught off guard, is unsure how to respond, but he feels the weight of the expectations and resolves to try his best. Later, during the school festival, Yuki is working at the maid cafe. As he's going about his tasks, a guy asks him to take out the trash if he isn't too busy, and Yuki agrees without hesitation. Outside, he notices the various classes participating in their activities, the lively atmosphere around him. He never thought much about school events before, but this time, he wishes he could enjoy it with someone. While standing outside, he overhears some boys gossiping about Alice, lamenting that despite her popularity, she's stuck with backstage work. Curious, Yuki looks over at her, but when their eyes meet, he quickly looks away, feeling suddenly self-conscious. He wonders if she would be annoyed if he invited her to explore the festival together. After all, she's popular and probably already has plans, leaving him uncertain whether he should even ask. He sighs, feeling a mix of nervousness and doubt. Just then, Alice purposely bumps into Yuki and looks up at him with a smile. His confusion grows when she teasingly asks if he's just been staring at her. Nervously, he wonders if he should even ask her to hang out, feeling the pressure rising inside him. In a spur-of-the-moment decision, he finds himself glancing at the maids nearby, prompting her to ask if he likes that kind of thing. Flustered, he tries to explain, saying it's not that he dislikes it. In fact, he admits he'd love to see her in a maid outfit. Before she can respond, they're interrupted by someone calling for their help. They quickly leave to take care of the matter and later find a quiet spot to rest, with the earlier tension still lingering between them. Alice opens up about her day, expressing disappointment that she hasn't had the chance to enjoy the festival. Yuki listens, his heart racing, wondering if this is his chance to ask her out. As she pouts slightly, he feels both determination and doubt. He wonders how he should approach the situation, the fear of rejection making him anxious. But he tells himself that now isn't the time to worry about that. Taking a deep breath, he finishes his coffee, ready to ask her to spend time together. With newfound courage, Yuki finally asks Alice if she'd like to explore the festival together. She looks at him, her cheeks turning pink, and excitedly agrees. Grabbing his hand, she beams with enthusiasm, making his heart race. She quickly lets go of his hand and starts pulling him along, urging him to keep up as she leads the way. Yuki follows, a mix of excitement and nervousness building within him. Alice soon releases his hand and asks him to wait for a moment. Yuki stands there, curious about what she's up to. Moments later, she returns, stunning him in a maid outfit. He's taken aback, thinking how incredibly cute she looks in the costume. He asks about it and she blushes slightly. With a playful smile, she explains that since it's the festival, she thought it would be fun to wear something special. Then, with a mischievous gleam in her eyes, she declares that for today, she'll be his exclusive maid. Yuki hesitates, unsure if it's truly okay with Alice, and asks her just to make sure she feels comfortable. She beams at him, her smile bright and full of warmth as she replies, of course. Her enthusiasm makes his heart flutter, and they continue on, ready to enjoy the festival together. As they walk, everyone notices Alice in her maid outfit, murmuring about how cute she looks. Suddenly, she calls out his name, urging him to hurry up. Yuki is astonished as he strolls beside her through the cultural festival, pinching himself to make sure he's not dreaming. The sharp sting of reality hits, causing her to ask with curiosity, "What are you doing?" She glances back at him with a playful smile, teasing him that if he doesn't keep up, she'll leave him behind. Her excitement is contagious, and Yuki feels a swell of happiness, glad that he dared to invite her. She brightens and asks if he wants some takoyaki. Yuki eagerly agrees, and as they approach the stall, the shopkeepers are clearly taken by her charm, announcing that they'll give it to her for free. Alice is taken aback by the unexpected kindness, not quite understanding why they're offering such a service. Yuki, who's never had anything like this happen to him, is surprised but watches as Alice insists on paying for the takoyaki herself. Afterward, she suggests they find a spot to eat. As they sit down, Alice looks at him with a playful glint in her eyes and tells him to open his mouth, saying she wants to feed him. Yuki is stunned by her sudden boldness. With a teasing smile, she explains that she hasn't had the chance to act maidenlike yet. Addressing him as master, she encourages him to open his mouth again. Yuki feels a bit overwhelmed by the intimacy of the moment but finds it an incredible experience. As he accepts the food from her hand, both of them blush, their faces warming from the closeness. However, as Yuki takes a bite, he suddenly starts choking because the food is still too hot. Alice's playful expression shifts to concern, and she immediately asks if he's okay, apologizing for not warning him. Yuki, embarrassed, reassures her that he's fine after recovering, but the awkwardness lingers for a moment. After the incident, they continue to explore the festival, visiting different stalls and having fun. Feeling confident after the takoyaki incident, Yuki wins a plushie for Alice at one of the game booths, proudly telling her how good he is at games like that. Alice smiles warmly at him, thanking him for the thoughtful gift, making his heart skip a beat as they continue to enjoy the day together.